How are you today, Barry?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Where are you today?
I'm in Glasgow in my dingy flat.
You're a rock star. You've got to try and make it sound more glamorous.
I'm in my palatial palace.
Wonderful. Look, Barry, I always start this podcast the same way, and I'm going to ask you now, please, to kick off your playlist by telling me the song that you think has the greatest ever intro, please.
The great of the ones that I've chosen. Oh, good question. It might be the Parliament song coming out of the rain, which is with the drum beat.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm right into that. That's that. As soon as I hear that, my ears prick up, and yeah, that's the one.
And it's always interesting because with this question, I always like to ask artists and songwriters that the way that people can sort of consume their music now is far different um, to, to maybe have how they would have got it maybe 10 years ago because of streaming services and record labels utilizing apps like TikTok now
Mm.
and and I generally like to ask artists, do they feel the pressure to have these short, sharp intros to songs now? Do they feel the pressure? But I'm speaking to someone from Mogwai, so I really don't think that that question is going to translate to.
Yeah, that pressure has quite wrongly been ignored by us from the beginning until right now. No, it's not. It's something. It's something. I was listening to someone talking about films the other day, and it's the same kind of thing. They were talking to sort of a younger person and saying, "You got to watch this film," and the person said, "Well, how long is it?" And like that's the wrong question to ask. It's like that's not how you should be consuming any sort of art. It's like it's is the length of it or how quickly it impacts you. So it's something that we haven't really edited out of
Yeah,
any of our songs.
yeah.
It's not important.
And it's quite interesting. If I'm right, I know that you and Stuart go and DJ at places and stuff, and
Yeah.
I've been a DJ in my venue for over 30 years playing, I guess you call it, or being the alternative music. And what I see now, which is quite unnerving, and it kind of ties in with what you just said that there about films, is I'll play a track and you get a nice little kind of, sometimes you get a cheer from the kids in the club. And then after about a minute, the phones come out their pockets and they're distracted. Knowing you think, Jesus Christ, if Mr. Brightside can't hold their attention in a Hindi night for more than a minute, we're screwed here.
Maybe they pretended to like the song at first and then they're Shazamming
Maybe. But I find
it.
that attention span that seems to be getting shorter is definitely kind of having an impact on music, film, and it's worrying. So yeah,
Yeah.
long may you continue to fly that flag.
Yeah, I
Uh,
suppose that's funny because like last year I got diagnosed with what was very clearly a long-term ADHD thing, and I used to not be able to listen to stuff all the way through. And when I was learning piano, I had a cousin who was also learning keyboards, and he would be able to go to these like family parties when we were like 11, 12 years old and play all these like I don't know like current songs from the charts at the time, and they would be like, Barry, can you play something? And I'd be like, I played the first 5 bars or something like that, and then it was like, can you not play something all the way through? And I was like, no. But the older I got, and especially when I joined the band, the long form thing uh, became something that I really didn't enjoy to something that I got my head around and started to really enjoy it. But it took a while. So I've always been a TikTok person since I was a kid. I just managed to sort of deal with it and manage it.
and joining Mogwai and obviously that sort of long form approach to making music. Did that change the way that you listen to other music as well? Because I've
Yeah.
seen the song list that you've sent over, and there's quite a lot of very long epic tracks on on a few of those.
Yeah.
Did it change the way that you listen to music as well?
It did, yeah, it really did. And that was from being around people in the band. In fact, all of them in the band, like just having the patience to listen to music. And we would, when we used to listen to music together on the tour bus, because no one had iPods or it was always just music coming out the stereo in the tour bus or the dressing rooms, was stuff like just long songs. And then eventually that, I don't know if you know that song Jerusalem by Sleep, the
Hmm.
51 minute, like when that went on, you would just get very little chat on the tour bus and just people sitting listening to music, slightly inebriated after a show. But that's a great moment when people can just sit, not talk to each other and just listen to music for that long. That's great. That's a great song.
Absolutely.
That's a classic on the bus.
I'm going to ask you to tell me the first song that you ever remember hearing that had an emotional
I'm
impact.
so glad you asked me that because it's not on the list because
Good.
I wasn't sure it would even be possible to find. But when I was 3 years old, so it's the earliest musical memory I have. I was 3 years old, um, and the house that my mum and dad and I lived in had a stairwell with a little landing halfway down and then into the living room. And they put me to bed and they must have been watching The Incredible Hulk, and it got to the end theme tune of The Incredible Hulk, that really sad one. And I came down the stairs and I was just standing on the landing, just crying. And my mum was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "It's really sad music." She was like, "Back to bed, son." But that's the first piece of music I can ever remember, and especially the first that I can have an emotional attachment to. And since then, I've learned it on the piano.
It's a really sad piece of music, though, isn't it?
It's amazing. Yeah,
Like,
it's so good.
like we're not too dissimilar in age, Barry, and that memory of that them sort of end credits of the Hulk,
Yeah,
it's really somber. It was
I
like,
know.
and to have
I
it
know.
soundtracked by that piece of music as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I felt your pain.
I think he was probably just sad because he had to go to the shops and buy more shirts.
I don't think I ever saw the Hulk getting paid for fighting crime, so it must have been quite not a particularly cost-effective way
No.
of being a superhero.
You thought he'd be getting some 2 for 1s.
Absolutely, there was no Primark back then, was
I
there?
was just going to mention Primark. It would only cost him like £4 every time he went crazy.
Oh, fantastic. Well, tell us a little bit about growing up. I mean, where was it, and I want to know if it was a musical environment.
Most of my childhood was spent in Uddingston, which is where they make the Tunnocks tea cakes. I don't know if you're familiar with them. And at one point, I lived across the road, but we lived in a little cul-de-sac, nothing fancy. And my upbringing was mostly Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen. My mum liked ABBA, Diana Ross, and the Supremes. I suppose, quite trad stuff. Like I wasn't into B movies. I wasn't listening to This Heat, stuff like that. It was kind of fairly traditional Lanarkshire village upbringing.
Yeah,
And then most of my friends, when I got a bit older, usual stuff like Jimi Hendrix, stuff I didn't like the Rolling Stones, and I didn't really get into it. But we all like Led Zeppelin and Funkadelic, Parliament. Um, nothing really, nothing like the Velvet Underground or anything like that. It was quite trad,
yeah,
and I don't want to say safe, but it wasn't particularly experimental stuff. But
yeah,
I enjoyed it.
yeah. But at a young age, I guess hearing Zeppelin and Hendrix and stuff like that at a young age, there's definitely moments of experimentation
Oh
there.
no, totally. Yeah,
You're
especially with Jimi Hendrix.
you're
Yeah,
also
yeah, yeah.
pushing the boundaries of what you're getting
Yeah.
up to as well. Do you know what I mean? And it was,
Yeah.
I know that every time we discovered smoking weed and stuff like that, like Funkadelic was never too far away from
Yeah.
stereo.
Yeah. It was, and we had this friend Brian who used to shell out money for the batteries for a boombox, and we would go down to the River Clyde, you know, everyone wearing combat jackets and stuff like that, and listening to stuff like that, and James Brown, and just yeah, kind of the usual stuff for Lanarkshire. a
Yeah,
little bit of indie music because we were obviously from next to the town where Teenage Fan Club and BMX Bandits and all those bands were from in Bells Hill. So there was a bit of sort of let's support our local bands too.
yeah,
But yeah, it was mostly 60s and 70s music, I would
yeah,
say. There was no Joy Division or New Order or anything like that, was which is what I loved to get into later.
yeah.
But at the time it was mostly that kind of thing.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you for track 3 to tell me the song that um, reminds you of your time at school, please, Barry.
Um, Probably Ride, Drive Blind. And that was the first poster I had on my wall, was like a Ride poster of I think it was the Nowhere album, and then it was Happy Mondays and Stone Roses. I liked all that stuff
Yeah,
as well. But yeah, I just loved it. It was the first time I realized I really loved noisy music. And that's, yeah, all my friends got into Ride as well. They're not even that much older than us. That's the funny thing. They supported us at the Hydro, and I was like, this is amazing. You know, it was mad.
they were so young as well. I think
Yeah.
like when you see, I think I can't remember. I can't think what the drummer's name is. Um,
Was?
yes, and
Yeah.
like I think he was like 16, like
Yeah.
on some of them early EPs, and like
Yeah.
the fucking drumming's ridiculous as well.
I
It's
know. I
so
know.
good.
He practiced. He had lessons. I don't know. He definitely practiced, and just like bands like that, I got given a friend. I used to work in a golf range when I was a kid, like picking up the balls. And there was another guy there, Joe, and he would give me tapes of bands that he was listening to, and Ride were on there, and Galaxy 500, and Dinosaur Jr., stuff like that. And I'd never heard Chapter House, My Bloody Valentine. I'd never heard of that stuff before because I was doing the Jimi Hendrix thing. And when I got this stuff, it was like immediately, this is amazing. Like I was so glad that someone would give you take the time to make a tape for you and then give you it. Glory days.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And could you even sort of back then? You mentioned that you had like the Mondays and the Roses and stuff like that, which
Mhm.
I guess around 88, 89, when you sort of 16, 17 or whatever age you were, they were
Mhm.
probably on the walls of a lot of kids. They were, two of the biggest bands in the UK at that time, and it
Mhm.
felt like there was something really exciting happening in Manchester. But you just mentioned, uh, Ride, Chapter House, Valentine's, and it's like, could you tell that there was a significant difference between what those other two bands were doing to the noise that I guess sort of Chapter House and Ride were making? Because your Dreams Burn Down and your Pearls and Falling Downs are far different from She Bangs the Drums or Wrote for
Yeah.
Luck, and
Yeah.
it felt that there was a lot more noise going on there. Did you
Yeah.
gravitate to that?
I just I liked it all, and I don't really know why. There was, I suppose my cousin and I, he would buy all the vinyl from, there was a great record shop. I wish I could remember the name. I think it was 23rd Precinct in Glasgow. And we would go down, which is now an off license, of course. And we would go down there and he would like just pick kind of random stuff. I'm not even sure we got to listen to it first, but it was the whole thing. I knew that I liked the sort of what was going on at the time. It wasn't like I could have got stuck in that whole, I don't think anything good happened after 73. You know what I mean? Which I had friends who were like that at school. They were like, nah, the last great band was Roxy Music. And I was like, well, I don't know. Just I thought it was good to listen to new stuff. Um, I didn't I probably didn't do enough of that, but when I joined Mogwai after that and I was introduced to so much more stuff, I think that's when the influences of that music really sort of helped me make music as well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
that was nice to meet those guys.
How much sort of, at school, did you have aspirations, and did it seem possible that you could have a career in music?
I was always going to have a career in music because I didn't want to be, but I panicked and was going to be a music teacher. So I studied for 3 years. Kind of about a year after school finished, I knew I wanted to do music because I'd had piano lessons since I was 10. But I realized I was extremely poor at, you know, explaining anything musical to children. And I soon gave that up. And luckily, after that, about a year later, I got asked to join the band just through chance. But yeah, I knew I wanted to do something like that, but I was doing that whole stay in the education system forever
Yeah.
thing, which I wasn't good at, and I'm glad it never came to be.
And having, you mentioned fan club and BMX bandits and stuff like that, that was, you know, becoming huge around the time of them aforementioned bands that we were just chatting about. And I guess Primal Scream were coming through and making big noises at that point. Seeing them bands doing that, did it make it seem doable that, bands from where you were from could have success?
Yeah, I think there was no um trepidation. There was no sort of nervousness about um being in a band from Glasgow or there was so many bands, there was so many rehearsal places, it was cheap. There was quite a nice community, even at the stage below Mogwai. Just all the local bands getting together. There was always quite a nice camaraderie, but like there was no snideness. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's cool that you're doing this. And then places like the 13th Note, where Alex Sopranos from Franz Ferdinand would promote the gigs, and it was like the cheapest thing ever. That I think I might be a false memory, but I feel like I saw Mogwai play before I knew who they were because of that club. I would go see them and the Yummy for and bands like that. And just it was a nice scene. And yeah, and the good thing as well, it wasn't like Manchester had a sort of not homogenous sound, but the bands were quite similar in some ways. Whereas Glasgow, it was kind of seen as a bit crap if you sounded like anybody else,
Yeah.
which I think, which I think helped bands like Mogwai to be heard.
Yeah. Absolutely. Can you tell me the first record you remember buying from a record shop, please, Barry?
It was bought for me. Does that count? Will I try and remember the one that I bought myself? The one that my mum bought me Queen live at Wembley. That's the first tape I had was Queen live at Wembley. It was either that or it was going to be a Police album, but yeah, I picked Queen. The first one I bought, God, I think it was so young it might have been Scoundrel Days by Aha. That's
Ah,
not cool. I don't care. I'm not gonna lie to you.
oh, I'll tell you what. I've got no issue. Your first record's not meant to be the cool record, but
No.
uh, I and I've been lucky enough to have Aha on the podcast
No way.
a year
Amazing.
or so ago, and I asked Mags, who wrote most of the songs. I said, like, asked him what the greatest ever intro was, and he was like, "Can I say Take on Me?" I was like, "Fucking course you can. You wrote Take on Me. What an absolute pop gem, mate. Got to put that in there. What a great intro."
I'm glad he's proud of it. That's hilarious.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, I want to move sort of forward a little bit from those early days of buying music through to the sort of, your more sort of formative years of really sort of getting into music and that. And you already mentioned one record shop in Glasgow. Was the record shop something that was important to you? Was it a hangout? Was it a place where you could meet other like-minded musos from the scene?
Mostly it was my cousin Paul and I would get our pocket money on a Friday night, and then we would make this like really exciting journey because we lived like 7 miles away from Glasgow city centre. So we get the train in and we go up there. And I just remember like trying to wear these half trendy clothes at the time and then going to this record store and seeing all the people in there. Never really spoke to anyone apart from between me and my cousin, but it was just a really exciting time. It's like I've not you don't really get that feeling anymore. Like it's probably an age thing as well, but you don't really have that sort of excitement about too many things. Especially since no, not that many people buy records anymore, and there's not that many record stores. But it was a real event, and then like getting on the train home and like looking at it on the way home, and I just remember opening the tape. I bought a lot of tapes actually. The tape of Bummed by Happy Mondays, and there was like a naked lady inside it, and I was like, oh my God.
It just keeps getting better.
Just this is amazing. So yeah,
Without
that
wanting to
was good.
sound like, a middle-aged guy reminiscing, but I do think of all the changes, I'm a big fan of, being able to pick your phone up and listen to any bit of music at any time. I think, that's very convenient. And,
Mhm.
I'd be lying if I said I didn't do that. But that, the fact that you can remember where you got bummed, and being
Where I
on
got bummed.
when you get tired, when you got bummed on the train, like, fucking hell. Um, but yeah, but like, there's an attachment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I just said.
I loved it. That was good. That's a keeper. That's a keeper.
As it come out, I thought, oh, he's going to pull me on that. There's no way I
Aye.
can let that go. But there is that, a journey attached to it where you go to the record shop and you would be devouring the record sleeves, and reading all the lyrics and reading, like, who produced it and stuff like that. Well,
Yeah,
I was a nerd, but like,
yeah,
but I don't think you get that. And one of the things that I also think is really lost in consuming your music via a telephone is album artwork. And I think,
yeah,
like, when people talk about, you pick up them coffee table books of like the greatest album covers ever, there's rarely anything in there from the last 10 years. And, it seems to sort of have stopped around the millennium because all of a sudden album artwork was this big and it wasn't something that you'd
yeah,
look at and have on your wall
yeah.
and stuff like that. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know. I feel like it was earlier than that. Like I remember buying a couple of Funkadelic albums, and that was I think it was the guy who did the artwork. I think was called Pedro Bell, and
It
with
was,
all
yeah.
those like drawings, and I remember buying. I got a student loan, and I went into the shop, and I ended up buying the two box sets of the CDs, which was like four in each one, and I just got them home, and I was like, this is too small. Like it was amazing having, the big ones as well, but having CDs was more convenient. And I just remember being really disappointed.
Yeah.
So years later, when we used to go on tour in the, 90s and stuff, we would get these like big wallets full of CDs. And I never used to put the album artwork in. And Stuart was like, "Where's all the artwork?" And I was like, "Stuart, I threw it out." And he was like, "You did what?" He thought I was insane for doing that, and then about 2 years later, he did the same, and I was like, "What's the point of it? It's too
Yeah.
small, even with
Yeah.
CDs." And now it's even worse. So yeah, that
Yeah.
was a bad trajectory for people who make artwork for albums.
I'm going to ask you next to tell me the song that soundtracked your years clubbing.
Clubbing, oh,
I
God.
mean, I should always, I should always add a little addendum to this because people always seem to think that I mean glow sticks in hand, shirt off in Ibiza or in some chrome-clad, 90s club. Not at all. This can be your local boozer that had a good jukebox, or this can be the local
Yeah,
indie night, that you
yeah.
threw yourself around them.
Don't know. Would it be from the ones that I've chosen?
It can be
Uh,
anything.
no, well, if it was any song, probably. Oh, that's a good one. I used to love Frankie Knuckles, Your Love. That
Oh, it's
was the one.
ridiculous. It's so
It's
good.
so good. It's like, yeah, that was the first song at our wedding as well. It's
Was
like,
it?
yeah, it was really difficult to get people up to dance, but if they were like, who's this? But yeah, that's a beauty, and especially being lucky enough to have Optimo in Glasgow as well, which is
Yeah,
a
of
bit later
course.
on. But yeah, that like all the songs that they played, that was just relentlessly good music all the
Yeah.
time. So it's hard to pick one, but I'll pick that one.
Yeah, that's a fantastic choice. And no one's ever chose that. I've done like 550 episodes of this
Yes.
now, and no one chose Frankie Knuckles. And you just Frankie Knuckles. But yeah, fantastic choice. Well, we've been talking lots about uh, Scotland today. So for this track, I'm gonna take you back there, and I'm gonna ask you to tell me a favourite song from an artist from your home county, please?
Very close by. It was Teenage Fan Club, Everything Flows. That was the first song I ever heard when I'd got my own. Well, I got to use my mum's car after I passed my driving test, and I was on my own. And funnily enough, I saw my cousin Paul that we used to go into the record store with, and like apparently I did this really fast wave because I was so nervous about driving. Yeah, he said I looked really terrified, which I was. But it was the only that album was amazing. It was the only poster we had in our fifth year common room. This really gaudy pink and yellow artwork with the dollar bag hanging
Yeah.
out the bag. And yeah, I had actual tears in my eyes when I love that song so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, just the whole album. I know that's from the one before actually. Now that I'm getting Catholic Education, but we had Catholic Education and then Bandwagon-esque, and those two albums were just like so good.
Yeah.
They were
And
amazing.
still so good.
Yeah, amazing. Like that was really the Catholic Education. The noise on that on some of those songs is just like it was like that, and the Boo Radleys doing all the noise stuff
Yeah.
from their first record, and I just loved all that stuff. Yeah.
That gets overlooked, like that first.
That first record's I mean, it sounds so muddy now, but
Yeah.
it's absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
good.
And yeah, it's really weird. Like I think when people seem to talk about those early shoegaze bands, like that record never gets a mention, and
No,
it's such a wonderful banger of a record. That
I know. I think maybe people thought it was quite, maybe it was like they thought it was quite derivative of other stuff around at the time, but actually it kind of holds up
yeah,
on its own. I really like it.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, for the last track, this is where you get to be influencer. I think the kids call it, mate. And I'm going to ask you to tell our listeners a song that you think they may not know that you would like them to go and listen to.
It's another Glasgow band, Yummy Fur, and the song's called Supermarket. And not to be self, I don't want Rock Action have put their compilation out. Our record company put the compilation out, but Stuart and I used to go and see the Yummy Fur all the time. And it's hard to pick a favorite song, but Supermarket's the one that just I love it. They're not particularly long songs, but they're quite like they get to the point without overstaying the welcome. And I might be going to see them on Saturday because they've done a sort of little reform thing. So
Oh, wow.
I'll be up the front. When I used to live in Germany, they announced they were doing their last ever show, which never ended up being their last show. And I said to my wife, I'm flying over to Glasgow to go and see this show. And John, the singer, knew that I lived in Berlin, and he saw me up the front, and he was like, he mouthed at me, "You're mental for coming over for this like tiny show and nice and sleazy's in Glasgow." And I couldn't miss it. And it turns out I can go and see them on Saturday too. So
Oh, glorious. Glorious. Well, Barry, we've been talking. I mean, we make it easy for the listeners of this podcast to go and check out that record and all the other songs that we spoke about. We do a little Spotify playlist to accompany the podcast so people can go and listen to the records that we've been nattering about today. But, we spoke about so much other music. We haven't spoke about you and what you're doing. So do you want to sort of bring us up to speed on all things Mogwai?
Yeah. We finished the new album about 2 months ago now, so that's going to come out early next year. We're also doing a drama soundtrack, which we seem to be getting more. Still haven't been given a comedy yet to do the music for, which is
Funny that.
a shambles. But the subject matter on this one, I probably can't talk about it yet, but it's not exactly fun. And after that, I guess we'll just be rehearsing until we come out on tour next year. So yeah, a little bit of downtime because the score work isn't constant because you get given stuff to work to when it gets edited and stuff. But yeah, it's keeping us busy.
Fantastic. And if people want to keep up the speed with everything that's happening with Mogwai, where's the best place to do that, Barry?
Nightclubs. Everyone's talking about is in nightclubs.
Yeah. Go and nudge someone and tell you all about it.
I was gonna say, like, I'm not on social media anymore, but I would imagine It would be social media. So
We'll
you can find out all the cool goss.
we'll tag Mogwai in it when this comes out. So if people aren't following the band already, then they can do so. And I've got to be honest, 550 episodes, I've never once asked a guy to tell me about the first time he got bummed on a train. And I've done that today. Fucking hell.
Maybe it should be a regular section.
Tell me the song that soundtracked your first bumming, please. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's so funny.
Barry, honestly, I've had a really, really good time chatting
Yeah,
to
me
you today,
too.
mate. Thanks loads for giving up your time today, mate.
You're welcome, Stu.
Oh, wonderful. I'm going to press stop. Don't go anywhere.
All right.